So let's start off with the SAT. Brief overview. It started in 1929 and it is developed by the College Board. It emphasizes general reasoning and problem-solving skills. It's widely accepted by US colleges and universities. It is also accepted by many international schools. Scored on a scale of 400 to 1600. And each section there is math and evidence-based reading and writing. So math and English is scored on a scale of 2 to 800. There is no subject testing as of 2021, and there is no essay as of 2021. For those of you who took the test before, there was subject matter that you could take, and there was also an essay option. And as of March of 2024, the test has gone fully digital. So there's no more paper test involved. So let's talk about the digital SAT. It was first administered March 24. It is an adaptive test for each student. So the test can technically be different for every single student who takes it in a certain time period. The adaptive nature is that the questions themselves are mixed up and there are two parts to each section. So the English section will have one part, and then how well the student does on that section will determine how difficult the questions will be on the next section. The same thing does apply to math. How well they do in the first adaptive section will determine the questions that they receive in the second section. So changes to portions of the test. The reading and writing portions have been combined into a single English section. They used to be two separate sections. Calculator and no calculator portions of the math have been combined, and you are allowed to use a calculator on the entire test. They removed the penalty for wrong answers, so they do encourage guessing if the student is able to eliminate possible answers and try to guess correctly. The questions are now weighted on difficulty. More difficult questions will garner higher points. There's another thing about the adaptive portion. So the first portion of English, the first portion of math is considered average difficulty. It will mix difficult questions, medium questions, and easy questions. If you do poorly in that half, you will be removing the difficult questions from the second half. So a lot of students will come out of the test going, oh, wow, that section was a lot easier than I thought it would be. That usually will mean that they received the easier adaptive portion. The downside of that is that it will highly limit their scores. If you get the easier section, that can cost anywhere between 100 and 200 points in what is available. Total time of the test is now 2 hours and 24 minutes. It's actually 2 hours and 14 minutes, but there's a 10-minute break in between sections. So it is a much shorter test than it used to be. So the reading and writing modules are 32 minutes each at 27 questions. Math, as I said, 10-minute break, and math is 35 minutes at 22 questions. Please note that in most cases, students will have over a minute per question. Okay, English. This is what is covered in the English section. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but basics are reading comprehension, command of evidence, words in context. This is mainly for vocabulary. Analysts in history, social studies, and in science. So some of the material that is presented will be historical. Some of it will be social studies or humanities related, and some of the questions will be science related. Expression of ideas, standard English conventions. This is actually just grammar. Many students will actually need to review their grammar before taking the test, and writing and language. So the main changes to the DSAT or the SAT going digital. English, the passages have changed from 650 words to 150 words. So the passages are much shorter than they used to be. There's one question per passage. Again, each passage is only 20 to 150 words. They will be mixing the English language and the reading comp questions all together. Previously, with a 650 word cap, that would be, I believe, 8 reading comprehension questions per reading passage. There is a diversity in passages, which is now including poetry. For students who have struggled in poetry throughout English, it would be a good time to review. There is an inclusion of passage comparison. So students will be given two different passages that are talking about a similar subject, and students will need to compare those. And there's a higher focus on understanding and literacy. So again, 54 questions in a total of 64 minutes. For the higher focus on understanding and literacy, there is actually a smaller focus on vocabulary. Vocabulary does tend to get easier with each iteration of the SAT, but students do still need to have a high level vocabulary in order to answer the questions properly. And as I said, the test is now adaptive. Okay, changes to the DSAT math. So this is what is covered. Heart of algebra. So this will be pre-algebra, algebra, and some algebra 2. Problem solving and data analysis. These will be what would be considered more science style questions. So students will be given data and will be told to analyze said data. Passport to advanced math will be for algebra 2 and some trigonometry questions. And then additional topics in math would include things such as geometry. The math changes. The calculator is now allowed on the entire test. Again, because the test is digital, there is a built-in graphing calculator on the software itself, but students are allowed to bring their own personal calculator. If students are used to using their personal calculator, I would actually recommend it because it is a little bit faster. The geometry focus has increased from 5 to 20% of the math questions. For students who have done geometry 2, 3, maybe even 4 years ago, I would highly recommend review geometry before the test. Comprehension questions. Word problems have increased to 30% of the test. There's an increase in mixed questions that will require multiple steps. So instead of solving a single question, students will need to combine different parts of math to answer a single question in some cases. There are 44 questions in 70 minutes. So roughly about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes per question. And please note that 33 of those questions are multiple choice and 11 are free response. So not really much guessing involved in the free response. The students will either have to know it or not. The geometry formulas are provided for the students. And once again, the test is adaptive. In the recent SATs that were taken in March and May, and then they also did the PSAT as well as international testing last year, math has seen the biggest score changes for students, and it has not been in a positive way, but in a negative way. Most students have seen anywhere between a 50 to a 200 point drop in math, especially for students who were scoring higher. So this is something that I highly recommend students review before testing. So the percentiles, what do the scores actually mean? As I said, 1600 is a perfect score, and we'll just drop down to 990. We're not going to go all the way to 800, but if a student scores 1530 to 1600, they are in the 99th percentile or even higher. So this means that they are the top one student out of 100. And then so forth. 1500 to 1530 is 98 to 99, and so forth. We'll actually review these scores in terms of colleges a little bit later on, but depending on the student, the classes that they've taken in high school, as well as their grades, most universities will have an idea of what the student should score. So please keep that in mind when it comes to application time.